We begin the Quran Daf Mesechta Nedarim Daf Chaf Hey. We begin on the second line down at the top of the Yamid. The Gemara is in the middle of a conversation from the previous Daf. We are in the middle of, like the title of this parak of Arba Nedarim, 4 types of Nedarim that, even if you took a neder, it doesn't even have to be asked about. It's totally not valid. The previous mission was discussing what's called Nidri Havoy, which is this exaggerated words, these empty words essentially, which you didn't mean what you were saying. That is a neder that is automatically permitted. And the Gemara was trying to figure out what's considered a shvuas havoy. We were comparing that, just like, at least according to the gears of the Ran, that nidra havoy permitted, so to shvuas havoy are permitted. And the Gemara was trying to figure out what the case was. And the Gemara said that, yeah, it's exaggerations. Machlekes and Rava we'll mention in a moment. But the Gemara had ended off with a question that, what do you mean? Why is it havoy? Maybe the guy meant, when he said Koyle Mitzrayim, he meant like ants. And maybe he swore appropriately. And that the Gemara said on the top of this Amid, said no. When a guy takes the shvuah, he's doing it based on what we mean. He's not going on like saying Oil Mitzrayim means a bunch of ants. He called them Oil Mitzrayim. And therefore, that's why it's obvious that it's Havoi and not just a regular shvuah. And that's what the Gemara is going to continue and ask on. Is that really true? That the guy doesn't make a shvuah based on his own understandings? We see, etc., etc. Which corresponds to Bekazich and Cheskel to Entem Dabachem, today's Daf. So this is discussed in today's Daf are this concept of a daited didam mishtabeya, that one cannot claim a daited nafsh mishtabeya. I'm swearing based on my own understanding. Regarding Moshe Rabbeinu shvuah about daiti badas amalkam, we say similar words. Adas amalkam. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu says. On my understanding and understanding of Hashem, what was the purpose why he did that? Then we discussed the next Mishnah, which is the next category of nidru shkogis, another type of neder that has no validity. But we discuss actually 2 forms of shkogis, the way the Ran explains it. There's a shkog b'shas amir neder. When you were saying it, you made a mistake, and shkog b'shas chalois neder. Not actually when you said it, but actually when it's taking effect. Then there's an error because it was based on the condition. Then you could have 2 ways that you could have a shkog that's not going to be a valid neder. And the halacha that kishem shenidir shkog is mutaras, kach shvuah shkog is mutaras, and the Gemara explains what's the case of a shvuah of a shkog. So, like we mentioned in the previous daf, we had, according to the girsa of the Ran, kishem shenidir havoy mutar and kach shvuah havoy mutarat. So we had 2 explanations. Abaye says it's not like that shaloi reisi. The way he changed the girsa was shvuah shreisi b'derech hazeh kol mitzrayim. I swear that I saw like the mitzrayim on this road. So he said he's not liable for making a shvuah shav because kushta kama. We said that a person would exaggerate and say kol mitzrayim. And regarding the other case of the Mishnah, shvuah shreisi nachash karis beis abad, said he is liable for making a shvuah shav because he's saying a lie because lo shayach beguzma. Rava said no. He changed the girsa, and then it's going to be pashut. So he said that it's actually the words of the Mishnah are the same as by shvuas. Yeah, the payers of the world should be forbidden on me if I didn't see b'derech hazeh kol mitzrayim. So again, same type of a reason shvuah is not effective because kush tukama. But regarding imlay reisi nachash kagar sabat, shvuah is not effective. Lo niskam unless he only had in mind to say something that he's exaggerating because he should have said it without it tonight. But we said he's still liable for shvuah shav because shukar kama. That's all just getting us to the point of this next point where the Gemara had a question from Ravina. We want to know why is a shvuah in the case of Koil Mitzrayim considered havai fictitious? What do you mean? Maybe he saw a bunch of ants. So yeah, he's saying that he saw 600,000 ants and he's calling them like the Oil Mitzrayim. Maybe that's what he's referring to. So the Gemara answered, Rashi said no. When the guy takes a shvuah, he's saying based on what us, the regular people, would think. People don't generally refer to ants as Koil Mitzrayim, and therefore he cannot claim a daita de nafsh mishtabeya. So that's where the Gemara continues and says on the second line down at the top of the Amid, asking on this point. Is that really true that a person cannot go ahead and take an oath based on his own interpretation and understanding of what he means to say? But the time when the Braisa, when they make him swear by a moed b'miktzis, the biblical halacha is that if someone comes to court and claims something to someone, the other guy admits to half of it, the halachically he has to go out and swear on behalf that he's denying that it's to that effect. So when he takes a shvuah, then they tell him, look, you should know. It's not like on the conditions in your heart we're making you swear. It's not like what you're thinking and you're having this in mind. Rather, it's on our understanding and the understanding of the court. Now, says the Gemara, okay, that's what the Brisa says. But lafuki mai, what's that coming to exclude? Lav lafuki de asiklu, isn't it coming to exclude when he he's addressing to the creditor, le'iskundere. What's a skundere? It's like a type of like kugelach. It's like there's like jacks, like small pieces of wood that they would play with, and he gives it to his creditor. These askundere, these little kugelach, and he calls them zuzi, coins, and that's how he wants to exempt himself from a shvu, because va'asklin shma zuzi. He says, "Oh, I gave you the money." Now he's calling the kugelach money because that's what I had in mind. I swore I gave him the money. I gave him the zuzi. I call kugelach zuzi. Now, from the fact that we tell him that no, it's going to be based on how we're thinking, not how you're thinking. The difference is the ovid inish the mishtabeya didn't have. That person generally could go ahead and take a shvuah based on his own understanding. So that seems to be difficult with what the Ravashi answered Ravina, that Ko'ilim Mitzrayim can't mean, has to be hyperbolic, because it can't mean ants, because that's not what people usually do. But maybe he did, maybe he had in mind, maybe he was saying Ko'ilim Mitzrayim like ants. So we said no, a person can't do that, but we see that a person does do his own das, from the fact that we have to tell him that it can't be based on your own understanding. But let's say when he makes a shvuah, when he mixes, the Gemara says, "Lo, that's not true. That's not what we're coming to la fuke." A person cannot just make up his own interpretation, translations of words. So what are we saying? Dal datenu. If anyways, it's automatic al datenu. Notice la fuke me kanya derava is a well-known, famous story. What's called kanya derava, from the stick of Rava, which this is not something that's like hyperbolic. It's for sure the person is swearing truthfully, because as we're going to see in the story, he gave the guy money. It's just he didn't give it to him for payment that is remained by him. That's what we're coming to exclude when we say al datenu and not al daitcha. Meaning, for example, where dahu gavra, there was a certain person that have a masik b'chabri zuze, where he was collecting by the guy who owed him money. So also coming to Rabbi came from the Rava. Amalei, so the lender said l'loiva to the borrower, zil parali, go and pay me. Amalei says, "What says pratich? I already paid you." In other words, as the Ran explains, I paid you some of it, because he was denying the whole claim. Then why, as the Gemara is going to shortly tell us, would he have to hold a Sefer Torah, but he's not obligated, but a Shavuos Hesses, when you're kaifak, when you deny everything, which are rabbinic oath, which actually, that's one of the main differences. You don't have to hold a holy object. But there must be, says around, that he admitted to part of it, just the Gemara is not going through the whole thing to explain it, because that's not really our main idea. But he says, no, I paid half. So Amalei Rabba said to him, if that's the case, so you have to go swear now on the half that you're saying that you paid him. So Azal v'Aisakanya, what he did was he went like this. He brought a stick, he hollowed out the stick, and he put money in the stick. And he's leaning on his stecken. And he comes to court. He says to the lender, he says, do me a favor, here, hold on to my stick. And Nosam Sevater, took a Sevater, and he swears the pare komad everything that he has in his hands, all the money he paid him up. The lender got so upset. He broke the stick of the borrower, and all the coins came flying down to the ground. Came out that the guy swore truthfully. He gave him the coins, and he wanted to get himself off the hook like that. That's what we're saying. Wait a second, heads of two. It's al datenu. It's meaning when we're saying al datenu, it doesn't mean to say that because you can make up what your own words mean. No, you can never do that. We wouldn't have to tell you that. What we were coming to tell you was, even if you actually paid him up, but in this deceptive way, don't think you're swearing, oh, I gave him the money. I really did give him the money. That's not what we mean. That's what we're saying al datenu, not in translation, but in intent. That's what we're saying. But just translation, you can't make up your own words, and therefore you cannot say that Yetzi Mitzrayim mean ants, and that's why we had said from Rabashi that it must be a Shavuos Havoi, and you can't say what Mikush to come. He said the truth because it means no. You just can't make up your own interpretations, and don't infer from this halacha that you could. No, it's coming to exclude a case when you actually did the truth in the translation, but not with the intent. So the Gemara continues to ask, is that really so? That the person cannot swear based on his own understanding? But I'll make another diak again that seems like you could, because of the time learned the Brisa. So to find by our teacher Moshe, When he made the Jewish people swear by Arvis Mayav that they're going to keep the Torah, let me say to them, have you heard him? Klai Yisrael, you should know. It's not on your understanding that I'm making you swear. Based on my understanding and the understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shlomo says a pasuk in the bottom. So the Ran explains, it means to say, not like it is by you in your thoughts, in your heart. Because if you think to say like the simple understanding of the pasuk is that not only you, but also all the few generations are in this oath, then if you don't need that, because the pasuk afterwards says that so I already know that. So what's lo itchem levatchem? That's coming to say not what's with you in your heart that I'm making you swear. Don't make up your own translations. I'm telling you the way we are thinking about it. That's what making you swear. So it says the Gemara. So what was Moshe Rabbeinu telling Klai Yisrael? Wasn't he telling them like this? Maybe you're gonna do something. You're gonna say, yeah, al datenu. This is how we understood it. That's what he's telling them. No, al dati, based on how I understand it. Says what's that coming to exclude? Lav lafuki isn't it coming to exclude that they call idolatry Eloha. In other words, even though obviously that's not what Moshe Rabbeinu meant when he said that, Hashem Elohechem, that you have to go ahead and, which means Elohechem we say because it means God, you're going to say no. When it said Elohechem meant Avodah Zarah. And that's what I'm going to do idolatry, because you're going to say, yeah, I swore I'm going to do what Eloheka wants. So, and that's what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, no, don't say it means Avodah Zarah. Obviously that a person could, when he's saying a shvuah, that's what I meant. I meant that. You see that you could do that, and that's what he's telling him not. So Gemara said, no. Avodah Zarah is actually translated, it's called Eloha, like it says the pasuk in Shemais. And all the deities, all the idols of Mitzrayim, and therefore, even if you're going to go based on their words, they are saying the truth that they swore such a thing. And therefore, that goes into the translation. But if it's not the translation, and you're just saying, that's what I meant kugeluch means money, that you can't do. And then, therefore, Rav Ashi's answer is correct. But then the Gemara continues asking, once we introduced this idea, that, so the Gemara wants to know, if you're telling me that he had to say al dati v'aldas hamalkim, so that you are not going to translate Eloha as avodah zarah, why didn't he just make them take a shiur de mekamis and mitzvahs? Then you would avoid this whole problem about what Eloha is making you do. Just say you have to do mitzvahs. Says no, mash mitzvah melch. That they would, again, the word could mean ken zachladen, and therefore he had to tell them al dati v'aldas hamalkim that would mean the commands of the king. Like the Rush brings the pasuk in Megillas Esther, Ma'duat Ta'iver es mitzvahs hamelach, which is the king Achashverosh. So saying mitzvahs wouldn't mean the Torah. You could say, oh, the mitzvahs of who? Of the king. So says the Gemara, but why didn't he just make them take a shvuah demekamisin that they're going to fill kol mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs? Says the Gemara, no, mash mitzvahs tzitzis. That would sound the mitzvah tzitzis. Because like the master says, shkula mitzvah tzitzis, the mitzvah of tzitzis is equivalent, connected kol mitzvah shabbat Torah, according to all the mitzvahs in the Torah. The reason for that is because we know the gematria of tzitzis is 600. You have the 8 threads, you have the 5 knots, which makes for a total of 613. And the 603rd mitzvah is uzchartim as kol mitzvahs Hashem. Tzitzis, when you say kol mitzvahs, you would say, oh yeah, that means the mitzvah of tzitzis. And maybe I would say, I don't have to keep all the other mitzvahs. Says, okay, but the Shabbat Yosef and the Mekamisin Torah, why doesn't he make him take a shvuah that they're going to keep the Torah? Now you know what that means. There's no other Torah that means. Says, no, mashma Torah achas. If you say Torah, that sounds like one Torah, meaning Torah Shabbat not Torah Shabbat Peh. Very easy to keep the Torah Shabbat. There's not much you have to do. But the Torah Shabbat Peh interprets everything. Says, okay, but the Shabbat Yosef and the Mekamisin Torahs, why don't you tell them that you have to fill Torahs, which would mean plural, Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh? Says, no, that would sound mashma. That would sound like Torahs Mincha, Torahs Chatas, Torahs Shashim. The pasuk talks about them. It says Torahs. So I would think, okay, I only have to keep the karbanas. I'm going to keep the rest of the Torah. Okay, says the Gemara, but the Shabbat Yosef and the Mekamisin, why didn't he make him swear that you should fulfill Torahs umitzvahs? So obviously that wouldn't just be the karbanas, because it would also mean mitzvahs. So the Gemara, no. Torahs mashma, Torahs mincha, etc. I would say Torahs means the karbanas, and mitzvahs mashma, mitzvahs melech, which means mitzvah of the kings. I would still say what I swore about would not make me do the whole Torah. Says okay, but the Shabbat Yosef and the Mekamisin Torah kula. Why didn't they just make him take a shvuah that you have to fill the whole Torah? Says the Gemara, Torah kula mashma. You know what Torah, the whole Torah would sound like? It would sound like a Kachavim. It's only to keep the mitzvah of avodah zarah. Why? In the Brisa, Chamura b'Yis Kechavim, idolatry is so severe where it's even it says by the karbanas of avodah zarah, b'chisishku v'leisasu es kol mitzvahs. That by the pasuk you see that shekala kofeba, whoever denies avodah zarah is kilu moed b'Torah kula. It's as if he is admitting to the whole Torah. So I would say, yeah, I said I'm going to keep the whole Torah. That just meant avodah zarah. Okay, but says why didn't make him take a shvuah to become misan avodah kechavim b'Torah kula? Then obviously Torah kula wouldn't be able to mean avodah zarah because you said avodah zarah already, and then Torah kula would mean the whole Torah. It can't just mean one Torah because you're saying Torah kula. And it wouldn't mean just Torahs of Kabbanis because saying Torah, you would avoid all the problems that way. Or you could just say Shishmesh for Shlesh mitzvahs. Why didn't it say you have to keep the 613 commandments? That would mean the whole Torah. So the Gemara says, Ella rather Moshe Rabbeinu milsad l'tricha nakat. He wanted to make it just something simple when he said Al das hamak v'daiti. Okay, that already includes everything already in it. So he just didn't want to have to say something that was too long of a commentary. But the Ran does bring that in Masechta Shavuos of Chav Tes Manav, the Gemara concludes, if that's the case, why didn't it just say Al Dati? Why did it say Al Das HaMakom? Is so that they shouldn't have any hafara for their Shavuah. Because if you're doing based on Hashem, then you cannot nullify the Shavuah. But Al Kaponim, what we see is, it's not because of Dati Denavshe Ishtabeya, it's rather because the word could tolerate something else. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu had to say Al Dati, Al Das HaMakom, or at least the Gemara ends up saying, because he didn't want to have to say Milsa de Tricha. But the point is, either way, you cannot be medayik that a person would be able to say, you see, I meant this. No, if anything, we would say that if your words mean something else, then you could say that. But you can't just make up, definitions in your head and saying, I swore I'm going to go to Acapulco. I didn't mean Acapulco there. I meant my neighbor's dog is called Acapulco. You can't just make up whatever you want to do. It has to mean that the words at least could be interpreted that way. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu would have to say, Al Dati, Al Das HaMakom. Now, he said in the Mishnah that one of the cases of havai, of exaggeration, and therefore it's not a neder at all, you never meant what you're saying, was the second case, if I didn't see a snake that's like the beam of the pressing house, then all the pairs of the world are forbidden on me. So the Gemara says that's exaggeration. So the Gemara says, there's no snake that's like the beam of the pressing house? But Vahu Chavi, there was a certain snake that was in the years of King Shapur. They had to give him 13 measurements of stables full of straw, and the snake swallowed them. So you see, this snake must have been ginormous, and so why can't it be like the beam of the press? As big as that beam is, it's obviously was no match for this snake. Some Shmuel said, no, we don't mean in size. We mean betaruf. We mean ridges, that there's certain cracks in the snake, or it means that like it's like a spotted. But it's regarding that like the beam of the press has certain ridges. That is what we said the snake has. Says the Gemara, kula nachshim mitzvah. Wouldn't all snakes have ridges? Says the Gemara, no, agabai tarev kamrinan. That the snakes have those ridges in their neck. They don't usually have the cracks in their back. We're saying that he said that like the beam had these cracks in its back. That's an exaggeration because they don't have that. So the Gemara says, but why didn't he say this? That if I didn't see a snake, that its back is taruf, is ridged. Why are you saying kakar is based abad, like the beam of the press, which really means ridged? Well, why don't you just get straight to the point and say that? Says the Gemara, you're right. The Mishnah could have said that he said that. We just parenthetically wanted to tell you an agav chidush, that the kodesh beis abad, that the beam of the olive press is gaboy tarav. Its back of that beam is ridged. So the Gemara says, why do I have to know that? Why do I need to know that when the guy who really is taking a neder, that the snake was ridged on his back, you're telling me like the beam, why do I need to know that the beam on the back is ridged? That's for business dealings. To tell you, if someone sells to his friend, he goes on Amazon, he orders kodesh beis abad, he gets the beam of the olive press, if the back of it is ridged, then yes, it's a valid sale. And if not, no, if someone is selling under the title kodesh beis abad for his friend without specifying, it has to have ridges. That's the agav, the gechidish that we're telling you. But the main point was that he said the snake was rich, and that's exaggeration because everyone knows that they don't have, and therefore it must have been just saying these lies for just whatever reason he had, and it's not that he meant to take a neder. That was the second case of the Mishnah. Now we continue with the third of the four nedarim, which is the topic of this parak, that we say that these nedarim have no validity whatsoever, called nidrei shgagos, the nedarim of error. Now, the Ram points out that there are two types of nidrei shgagos. One is the first case the Mishnah talks about, where at the time of the vow, he was mistaken. For example, let's say he takes a coin and he says, a neder, that this is forbidden, if I ate or drank today, then, you know what, this whole thing is forbidden to me. He forgot. He remembers he had a coffee in the morning. He actually ate that morning. So that was a mistake at the time that he took the neder. Then the Mishnah says another case where he was in error at the time when the vow is going to take effect. Meaning, even though when he said it from his mouth, he was not in error. As the Mishnah says. Let's say he says, Sha'ani oichel b'sha'ani shaisa, that I will eat, that I will drink. In other words, he says, kainim, that it's forbidden on me this loaf of bread if I'm going to eat or I'm going to drink today. And then guess what happened later that day? And then he forgot and he ate and he drank. Now, since the neder is supposed to take effect when he goes and he first eats at that moment, and that moment he was in error. In other words, he didn't remember that his neder was dependent on eating later on the day. Therefore, the neder is not going to take effect because he was in error. Now, similar cases of error, we quoted this once before, that on Daf Chav Beis, let's say a guy says, there's an issur of neder on my wife to have hana for me, because she stole my wallet. Or for she hit my son. No woman like that is going to have anything from me. It turns out, he finds out, she didn't hit him. She didn't steal his wallet. That's a nidrei shgagos. It was an error. Well, let's say, in this case, we're going to be discussing at length. Let's say he saw them eating his figs. And he says, carbon. My figs are forbidden on you like a carbon. He's taking a neder that to prohibit these people eating his figs. He comes into the coffee room, people are all eating his cookies and everything. He says, my cookies are carbon you. And he finds out his father and his brother are one of the guys eating his figs. Now, there were also other people there. So actually have machlekes, Bisham Bisil. Bisham Hemutarm, the school of Shammai say that they are permitted, meaning the father and the brother are permitted to eat the figs, and Umashimam Asrum, but the people that are with them are forbidden. Bisilam and the school of Hill, they say that Eilu Mutar. No, both are going to be permitted, which is a very important principle that comes up in today's daf, because of what's called neder shehut miktsasai, a vow that part of it is permitted, hutur kulai, is all permitted, like the Gemara is going to bring. And since it's permitted, this neder for the father and the brother, it's going to be permitted for everyone else also. And as the Ram points out, when we say mutarin, that's going to be even without being shoyed by the Rav. Like we said on Daf Chav Beis, that all these four nedarim, you don't have to ask to the Chacham. Now the reason for that is because since had he known that his father or his brother was with them, he would have excluded them from the klal. So therefore that means to say that the Iker Neder was mistaken. He never had in mind that it should be on his father. Wherever you have in the primary Neder a to'os, that means to say what he said and what he had in his heart are not the same. And therefore it's bottled by itself. And therefore, by the case of, let's say when he says that my wife is forbidden to me, that he has to specify because she stole my wallet. Because if not, even though that was his intention, but since his intention was to take a neder on his wife, so there's no real toys in the ikr neder, unless you explicit said because of the wallet. But over here, he never had in mind for his father ever, never had his father in mind. There he had his wife in mind. It just, the rationale was because of this. So you have to say that. But here, he never meant the father, and therefore the neder is going to be bottled by itself. Therefore, all these cases do not need even hataras nedar. Now, it says the Gemara, Tana, we learned in the Brisa, that kashem shenidr shkag is mutar, just like the case the case in the Mishnah we discussed of a neder by mistake is permitted, kach shvuah shkag is mutar, so to an oath that's an error is permitted. It says the Gemara, okay, hechdem shvuah shkag is, what's the case of erroneous oath? So the Gemara says a chiddush, kagun Rav Kana Rav Asi. These two students of Rav, Hadei Nama, this one says, I swear this is what Rav said. The other one says, I swear Rav said this. The kolchad v'chad, each one of them, adaited in nafshe, according to his own understanding, he's swearing correctly because he's convinced this is what Rav said. Now, as the Ram points out, this is not to say that we don't find the case of shiur shgagas only in such a case, not similar to the case of the Mishnah. No, the case of the Mishnah in the shvuah would also be mutar. We're just actually saying a novelty. It's as if we're saying, how far would we say that shiur shgagas would be permitted? Like we say in general, ad heichen gilgal shvuah. The chiddush is that even the Rav Kana and Rav Asi, each one of them is telling the other one that he made a mistake and he didn't understand what Rav said. So you would have thought to say that since he's not concerned and he makes a shvuah, it's not mistaken. And if he makes an issur dependent, let's say of peiros, he should be forbidden. Then no, even though he knows what he's saying, that's considered a shkaga because he obviously is in error. One that they're not really didn't fully understand what Rav said, and therefore, if it turns out and it's not like what he said, he would not be held responsible for such a shvuah. That's how far a shvuah shgagas would go. Now, we said in the Mishnah that ra oisan v'oichon. We said, and this is going to take us into the next daf, that let's say he sees people eating his figs, and he says, "Yo, guys, this is a carbon on you." And then he finds out that some of the people are his father and his brother. So everyone agrees that the father and brother can be permitted because he never had a mind. There's a tois beikaned, that's a neder shkogas. But what's with everyone else? He doesn't want these people to be eating his figs. So we have Beis Shammai that says, okay, father and brother are permitted, the rest are aser. Beis Hill holds that no, everyone's going to be permitted. So the Gemara introduces, that's going to relate back to Allah of a Mishnah, Tanan Hasam. Learn over there, Mishnah of Samach Vav Med Aleph. The Mishnah says, Peischin b'Shabbosais u b'Yom that when you have a case of, the case here is talking about, let's say someone took a neder, he's not going to eat, he's not going to drink wine for a year. Now, he didn't mention anything regarding Shabbos and Yom Tov to exclude them from his statement. Now, when it comes to Bishoyl on his neder, we could open up what's called a Pesach for him in the covet of Shabbos and Yom Tov, because we say, had you remembered when you took the neder regarding Shabbos and Yom Tov, would you have made a neder? And he says, no, how could I go Shabbos, without having any wine? So we permit him even for the weekdays, as the Mishnah there says, because of what's called neder shhut miktsasai hutukulai. So that's what the Mishnah says over there. We open up for him regarding his net of wine. That what's going to be with Shabbos and Yom Tov? Oh, Shabbos and Yom Tov. If I would have thought about that, I'd never have sworn off wine. Now, in the beginning they said, okay, so those days of Shabbos Yom Tov, that's permitted because that you never had in mind. But but the rest of the days, okay, you should be asur. Rabbi Kiva came along and he taught the following halacha: when you have a neder that some of it is permitted, which is Shabbos and Yom Tov, so then the whole thing is permitted. Which the Ram points out, this halacha is not really similar to exactly to the halacha of our Mishnah, because in our Mishnah the neder is bottled by itself. We said that since he didn't mean the father and the brothers, poof, you don't even have to be shoyl on it. It was a neder shkogas, and then once it's not for them, it's not for everyone. But in that Mishnah over there, the neder takes effect. You just make a Pesach for him regarding Shabbos and Yom Tov. And the reason to differentiate is because in our Mishnah, there's, like we said, there's a tois in the Ikar HaNeder. You never had a mind for your father. So that's automatic. But in that Mishnah over there, regarding the Pesach, you can't say that someone who made himself forbidden on Basar and Yain for 1 year, he knows that it's going to be Shabbos and Yom Tovim. So therefore, since there's no tois bika neder, the neder takes effect. It's just that you could open up him and say, oh, okay, hello, Hezek too. This covered Shabbos, covered Yom Tov. Had you known that you're not allowed to fast in those days, would you have taken a neder or some type of regret? He says, yeah, of course I knew, no toys big on neder, but I regret it. So that would be a valid Pesach. So why are we bringing this Mishnah over here? It's because we want to explain the machlekes b'Shammai Hill of our Mishnah to say that regarding neder shehut miktsas shehut kuli, that's what it depends on. And just like the machlekes Rabban and Rabbi Kiva depends on the same idea. So therefore, we say Rabbi Kiva holds, no, neder shehut miktsas shehut kuli. The Chachamim had said, no, Shabbos and Yom Tov can be mutter, but the rest of the days are going to be asur. So on this point, the Gemara explains like this. Amar Rabba. Rabba says, the kul yamad that according to everyone mean b'Shammai Hill. Wherever you say, had I known that my father was amongst you. It's going to get very complicated here in a second. Had I known that my father was amongst you, I would have said the following words. I would have said, kulchem asurin. Now, what's important about these words is because what were the words he actually originally used? He said, to the people who are eating his figs, Hari Alechem Carbon, which is everyone. He's saying, I would have said you're all aser, which is what's called maimed. He's maintaining what he would have said, but just he would have added on chutz me'abba, except for my father. He would have made an exception. Then says Rabbah, everyone agrees, both Bisham and Basil, the kulan asurin. In that case, everyone would be aser, the avav mutter, but the father would be permitted. Why? Such a case is not called neder shod miktsasa hotekulai. Why not? How's that not neder shod miktsasa hotekulai? You said everyone, and then you're saying, oh, had I known, I would have said you're all aser besides my father. You know why? Because since when he took the neder, he did say you're all aser, and now he's also maintaining his original words regarding everyone else in the same terminology that originally said. So though he would be excluding his father from the category, even so, that's not neder shod miktsasa, because the father was really never included in the understanding of the neder. And regarding everyone else, he's still maintaining the same words he originally said. He's still saying kulchem asurim. He just would say, I would have said chutz me'abba. And I never had him in mind in the first place anyway. So it's essentially like maintaining, everyone would agree in this case, that even Basil, that all of them would be aser, and the father would be permitted. The machlik is only in the following case. He would say, when he finds out that, oh, Tati, you're here? Had I known that my father was amongst you, I would have said, plainly asurin. He wouldn't have said the terminology, all of you. He would have said, Shimon, Yankel, David, you guys are all forbidden. The Abba Mutter, and my father is permitted. It's like the Ran explains on the top of Chavav Medalev, Beis Shammai is like the Rabbanan. They don't hold of Neder Shod Miktsasa Hutakul. So that makes sense. That's why we brought the Mishnah on Daf Samach Vav. That's why only the father would be permitted and the brother, but everyone else would be forbidden. But Basil is like Rabbi Kiva. So what's different over here than the first case where we said Basil agrees that the others would be forbidden? No. Here it's different because here you have 2 points. First of all, it's totally mistaken regarding the father. And even regarding the others, there's a mistake in the wording that you're saying. Had you known that the father is there, even the others, you would not have made them forbidden in the same wording that you originally used. What's the reason? Because the person is particular. He doesn't want that it should be understood from his words, even for a moment, to think that my father is included in the Isser. Therefore, he says, I would never have said kulchem, because kulchem, the moment before I say chutz ma'abba, would have included father. I would have said yenim and yenim and yenim and yenim. Since there's 2 points. One, that it's totally mistaken regarding the father. And two, it's mistaken in the wording regarding others. It still holds that's considered a neder that's shahut to miktsasai, that the intrinsic neder is permitted part of it. Therefore, that would be hutter kulai. That says Rabbah is the interpretation of Machlekes Beisham Basil only in the case of when his wording would have been different, not just his intent. Thank you for any time for hosting us.